Welcome to the Mockingcast, the podcast of Mockingbird Ministries. I'm David Zoll, your host, and in a few moments, I'll be joined by my co-hosts, Sarah Condon and RJ Heyman. We come to you every other week to discuss a few of the places where we currently see grace and its absence playing out in unexpected and compelling ways. We're glad to have you with us.
Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. God.
May has arrived. The conference is behind us. Sarah, it was just such a joy and a privilege to be with you. So much fun. RJ, you were deeply missed, though we did shout you out in a couple of different ways, one of which was at least nice. But
I'm disappointed.
We're it's, you know, I'm grateful to have the biggest week of my year behind me with the book release and the conference.
I bet.
And my son getting confirmed. And my wife just happens to have this like community service like gala thing she helps organize. Was also on the same weekend, so it's just like
Naturally
wild. But here we are. It is the second week of May. Sarah, how you doing?
I'm good. It was a wonderful conference, and yeah, I just love meeting all the new people. I like, there's a certain cynical part of me that has been going to the conference a long time and can kind of like take a lot of it for granted. And it's a powerful thing to be around people who have never been to a conference before. And it reminds you of just like, I hate to use this word, but like the real magic of it. I don't hate to use that word actually, because like Jim is like the best magician, we could ever have. So yeah, it was a really sweet time, and I loved meeting people. It was great.
It was like, RJ, it was about almost half new people, like 45%.
Amazing.
New people, and the largest crowd we've ever had, and the best weather we've ever had. And
the weather was so good.
The talks were sort of uniformly wonderful. They should be up, at least for the main ones. We're waiting on a couple of recordings from the breakout sessions, but the main ones are up on the Talking Bird feed, so people can listen to those. We'll roll out the videos as they get processed. But yeah, Sarah actually, she says magic because she was a magician's assistant.
I was
in a very delightful way.
I was, yeah.
It's kind of a role. Felt like a role you might be been born to play.
Did you have to wear fetching clothing to do that?
I always wear fetching clothing.
I'm sorry.
So
I apologize.
I permanently dress like a magician's assistant every day because you never know. That was so much fun. And Jim is, he's a co-sufferer. So I loved us being up there together, like doing
Jim McNeely, awesome. the great Jim,
legend,
as he calls himself.
The great Jim.
So good. It was so good. That was like the one part of the conference my husband videoed because he was like, the kids have got to see this. So
well, I have my Josh Condon memory was of tears streaming down his face as Sandra McCracken is playing the piano, and like we're sort of floating off into heaven. And Sarah had gone to go on an outing with some parishioners, and Josh was just there, and he was just soaking it in. It was really fun to be right with him, right front row.
We had a lot of fun. It was great.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone that helped, especially Chris and Emily White, who really ran things this year.
Superstars.
And, just raised the level of the game.
Yeah. And Emily Newton, there's so many. I know you don't want to shout out some people and then not.
I know, but Emily Newton.
People, but
let's just have a moment of silence. What a
our social media was incredible. So yeah, she was great.
Well, RJ, you had some Dutch family in town, I think. Tell us.
We did, yeah. My cousin who lives on a houseboat in Amsterdam, and his 3 kids were here, and it was really, really fun. Hadn't seen them in a while, quite a while. And they're all growing up, and the 2 oldest kids are about the same age as my 2 oldest kids, although my kids were not here. They're working and going to school out in Texas. But we had a really great time. We went to the beach. We went out clubbing one night, which was really hilarious. My cousins got massively hit on by people way too old to be with them. But I was like, welcome to Palm Beach. We sang Piano Man in the church, which was really fun. It was really great. It was really, really, so I was sorry to miss, but I feel like I couldn't miss out on that time with my Dutch family who I hardly ever see.
Yeah.
live on a houseboat in Amsterdam. I mean,
That's
please
crazy.
don't tell me they
It's
wear
very
like,
Dutch.
do they wear clogs? I mean, what was
Yeah, of course. Yes, clogs, and they only eat cheese.
they only eat
And
cheese? They have a
yeah,
windmill, right?
pancakes and cheese. That's right.
That's
I love it,
amazing.
man. I love
Yeah,
it.
it was very fun.
Well, lots to talk about today. Some great articles come our way. And this first one is kind of Mother's Day adjacent. By the time this comes out, Mother's Day will be history, but we are
Oof,
on the
my
eve
God.
of Mother's Day. And our new favorite writer out there, this will be the third time we've referenced her work in The Atlantic, Ellen Cushing, who wrote about the parties, Sarah.
Oh, yeah.
She's very funny.
Yeah.
She wrote this last week. The brands are very sorry about your trauma. She says, Cameo wants me to know that if I would like to not receive Mother's Day related promotional emails, I can opt out. So does Heyday, the millennial skincare company, and Parachute, the millennial linen store, and Prose, the millennial shampooery, and at least 2 different stores that have sold me expensive candles. They offer this service using the whispery timbre and platitudinous vocabulary of therapy speak. This time of year, I am told, can be meaningful but also tender. I can take care of myself by electing not to receive Mother's Day marketing emails. This is well-intentioned, of course. This holiday can really be difficult for any number of reasons. Being a mother and having a mother are also 2 of the most profound experiences a person can have, and profundity is rarely uncomplicated. Not being a mother, if you want to be one, can be a sadness you carry in your pocket every day. Well, whatever's going on, I can guarantee that no one wants to be reminded of their familial trauma by the company they bought a soft rib bath bundle from 5 years ago. And so they email us asking if it's okay to email us. The Mother's Day opt-out email suggests that the brand sending it sees you as a whole person, not just as a market segment, at least for the moment. It uses an intimate medium to manufacture more intimacy. It allows the brand to suggest that it is different from all the other corporations competing for your attention and money, while simultaneously giving them more access to your attention and money. One marketer said, it's the kind of thing that probably means a lot to very few people, but those people really appreciate it. Well, like a lot of what makes for good business these days, the effect is a little absurd. So many emails about Mother's Day are flying around, all in the service of sending fewer emails about Mother's Day. Advertisements are constantly shooting into every unoccupied nook and cranny, but the good ones are now sensitive to our rawest family dynamics. Also, not to be too literal about it, but the idea that pain or regret or tenderness or whatever the brands want to call it is something a person can decide not to participate in is fiction. Mother's Day originated as an occasion for expressing simple gratitude for childcare and the women who do it. People celebrated by writing letters and wearing white carnations. It is now a festival of acquisition, a day mostly devoted to buying things. $34 billion worth of things this year, according to the forecasters. Now, she's touching on a lot of different things in this very pithy and I think funny column, and there's a lot more to the column. I maybe because I'm not subscribed to those brands, I'm not getting these opt-out emails, but I do certainly understand this, the corporations who are trying to speak to me as though
They
I'm
know
their
you.
best buddy, and
Yeah.
hey, it can be kind of difficult this time of year. I don't know. What Sarah? You're a mother here. Let's talk about it.
I mean, Mother's Day is really hard, but like this doesn't make it easier. I mean, that's kind of the first thought I have. Like, this is not helping. It is like a reminder about something that, if you don't want to be reminded of, them sending a reminder email is not helping. I'm so curious, like, what that marketing meeting was like. It does lean into this like weird corporate sensitivity that they actually don't care about you at all, but they're trying to find ways to act like they care about you. So
It feels like AI caring about you. It's like,
yeah, I mean,
we should.
Remember,
I wouldn't.
Bo
nothing-
Burnham. What are you doing about structural racism? Wheat thins. Remember? From
Yeah.
inside?
You're just like,
Yeah.
what? I don't know. RJ, what are you thinking? Because I'm thinking different things. But what are you thinking?
Well, the first thing I'm thinking is that I feel like I always blow Mother's Day, and that I'm very grateful to my wife who always says, hey, why don't we celebrate Mother's Day on the Sunday after Mother's Day?
Mhm.
And that way we don't have to fight the crowd for brunch reservations. So I'm grateful for her just buying me a little bit of time. to do Mother's Day. It does make me think. I think, Sarah, you kind of, as a woman and a mother, gave me permission to not celebrate Mother's Day in
Mm.
church, to
Oh,
not have it be
yeah.
part of, because a lot of churches make a huge
A
deal of
huge
Mother's
deal.
Day, which
Yeah,
I
like you
know
get a special colored carnation if you're a
something
mother,
like
or if
that,
you're not
which
a
for some
mother,
people is the
if
best
your
thing in the
mom's
world.
dead.
Yeah, and for some people, it's like, I'm gonna skip church that day.
Yeah.
So basically, we don't say anything about Mother's Day except like at the end of the prayers of the people, I will offer a very short prayer thanking God for our earthly mothers and thanking Him
Nice.
that He's our divine parent.
Nice.
And I do think about all the young couples that I've counseled through the years who like struggled with fertility issues and
Yeah.
like it led them to depression, like deep depression. And then, in most, I don't want to say in all cases, but in pretty much every case I can think of, they ended up having a baby and there was healing and it was wonderful. But man, that is a gauntlet to run. And so I think it's fraught. It's fraught. And I guess I have some sympathy for if there are any human beings in these corporations, which they are. Yes, they're trying to sell stuff. They're also trying to be somewhat sensitive. And like, I don't know, that's a tough balance to strike.
It does feel like such higher stakes, though, like in terms of consumerism, which I have been thinking about these past few days. Because like I remember we would do, so for my mom, we would do the James Avery, you can get these charms and the kids would each pick out a charm for her and then we get her a necklace, which was like probably $150, $200 every year. And then we acquired Miss Kim. So then we did the same thing for her. And then we decided Aunt Becky needed it too. And suddenly we're spending $600 at Mother's Day before we even bought me anything. And I was thinking about that and thinking about how my mom literally would give her mother and her mother-in-law a potted plant.
Mm.
And that was it. You know what I mean? Like from the grocery store and a card, and how it has become like really unnecessarily extravagant in some ways.
Which is what we do to everything.
Acceleration in all things.
Yeah, it is. But I do wonder specifically about like I wonder if it points to deeper things and deeper truths about like women working the second shift, right? When they get home and like they're working full-time jobs and they're coming home and they're pushing themselves to their max. If you're my age, you're also eating a lot of protein, like, and like figuring out where you're going to make everyone for dinner and like all of those things where it's like, actually, if you just had somebody who felt like more of a partner in the home, that would actually be better than a charm bracelet. I don't know. So, I mean, like, I do wonder if there's a certain like making up for. But then it also hits that icky thing in me of like push presents. Do you guys know push presents? Okay, so it's because we're old. Push present is like a gift that you get after you have a baby from your husband.
Oh, a push present. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Push a baby out of your vagina. So you get a gift. I am like, people have done this for millennia, and like, why are we making a thing about this? I don't know. I have a godmother that lives here. She's like 5 minutes away from us, never been married, doesn't have children. And, we're going over to her house for Mother's Day and she's doing a big lunch for us. And like, that'll be really beautiful and won't
That's
require
awesome.
anything of me. And yeah, we'll get
It's
her
what
people to be
happens
with
whenever
Mother's Day.
you take something that's supposed to be an expression of like genuine love and affection and you make it a demand. Right? It kills it.
That's the thing, RJ.
Right? It destroys
That's
it.
the
And
thing.
and
Yeah.
are we as appreciative and loving towards people in our lives as we should be? Like, of course not.
Right.
We could always appreciate more, but it's like, you better appreciate me. It's like, okay, well, that might
Yeah.
not look the way you want it to.
Well,
And it won't feel good for either of us.
Yeah.
Cushing traces this sort of back to the pandemic and then George Floyd and the sense, especially among younger generations, that the world was completely falling apart and that they all of a sudden started to expect more from the brands, because brands are so important.
Oh, that's so
They all of a sudden
interesting.
expected more from brands to sort of care about the things they cared about and also to care about them. It runs right next to sort of, people expecting college professors to be their parents, not just like their teachers and stuff like that. There is an over expectation or a almost like a delayed adolescence. It builds into all of that. I don't know what it is, but I just think cynicism, I recognize that before they were sending these opt-out emails, they were probably getting from a small portion of the population to whom it would mean a lot to opt out. They were probably getting very angry or like pointed, upset emails, and so there's probably a response. But then for me, I'm just thinking like, this is just another, what do they call the touch point? Corporations, they need to be in touch with you like 3 or 4 times a week, and this is
Right.
another example of the way they can actually remind you, hey, we're still here. You can still buy stuff from us.
Right.
What, Sarah?
I was listening to John Mayer. I listen to his radio station a lot, and he's a complicated person, but I like the music he picks and I like his music. And this morning he was like talking about a song before he played it. He was like, music is therapy, but therapy is therapy too. And that's,
Consumerism isn't therapy.
Yeah. Like feeling like you're taken care of by a company may feel therapeutic, but actually therapy is therapeutic, like.
I think I've told the story before to you guys, but I tell it in the book about the one time in my preaching life that my rector vetoed content was on a Mother's Day sermon when I quoted a New Yorker cartoon of a woman standing at her mother's funeral, and the punchline was, "Mother wouldn't want us to feel sad. She'd want us to feel guilty." And I thought it was really funny, but he said, "You've got to cut that. Like, that's too much of a lightning rod. It's just," and I realized you can't play around with that day. And this, ever since, I'm like you, Sarah and RJ, I just act like it's just another day.
I think if you feel like you need to say something, like you just need to acknowledge people had good moms, people had bad moms, and most moms are medium moms.
I like my mom. Hi, Mom.
Oh, we love your mom too.
I love my mom too. My mom's in Florida right now.
My mom's dead.
I also
Wah, wah, wah.
wah, wah.
Who invited her? Yeah.
Debbie Downer. Dave, when you were talking about people expecting more from their brands or their professors, like I always wonder when people have unrealistic expectations, what's the wound or the pain that's covering? What are they trying to compensate for? And we're coming up to what's often called a Good Shepherd Sunday. This Sunday, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder how many people in our culture feel that way, that their family has failed them. They're not part of any communities. They're lonely. Their government has failed them. And that's why maybe they're projecting these needs at places where they don't really belong, because they need someone, like what's a song? So they need someone to watch over them.
So it's
right?
It's a measure of pain.
Yeah.
In certain respect, or at least of rejection or fear.
People certainly feel like it's, they're out there and they're just one bad decision away or one fateful event away from it all totally falling apart. And they feel like there's no one there to hold them or catch them, or no one to call, no one who's on their side.
That's a compassionate and non-cynical take. I appreciate it. I appreciate it deeply. Let's move on to the next thing, which is sort of a more of a downer here. Is this the worst ever era of American pop culture? By Spencer Kornhaber in The Atlantic.
Great name.
It might be Haber. I don't know, but I've been reading him for years. I appreciate him deeply. I think he subscribes to Mockingbird, actually. Is this the worst ever era of American pop culture? According to a recent YouGov poll, Americans rate the 2020s as the worst decade in a century for music, movies, fashion, TV, and sports. A 2023 story in the New York Times Magazine declared that we're in, quote, the least innovative, least transformative, least pioneering century for culture since the invention of the printing press. Whoa. What's so jarring about these declarations of malaise is that we should logically be in a renaissance. The internet has caused a Cambrian explosion of creative expression by allowing artists to execute and distribute their visions with unprecedented ease. More than 500 scripted TV shows get made every year. Streaming services reportedly add about 100,000 songs every day. We have podcasts that cater to every niche passion, and video games of novelistic sophistication. Technology companies like to say that they've democratized the arts, enabling exciting collisions of ideas from unlikely talents. Yet, no one seems very happy about the results. Critics are citing very real problems. Hollywood's regurgitation of intellectual property, partisan culture wars hijacking actual culture, unsustainable economic conditions for artists, the addicting, distracting effects of modern technology, Entertainment companies have long understood the power of giving people more of what they already like, but recommendation algorithms take that logic to a new extreme, keeping us swiping endlessly for slight variations on our favorite things. In every sector of society, Ted Gioia, the wonderful critic who's behind the Honest Broker Substack, told me, we're facing powerful forces that want to impose stagnation on us. Music, Gioia says, is turning into a rights management business. There are vested interests now that don't want new music to flourish. The private equity funds just want you to listen to the same songs over and over because they own them. If Bach were alive today, Gioia says, he'd spend a few weeks trying to break into the LA music scene and say, I'll be a hedge fund manager instead. Let me stop there. There's a lot more to read, but let's hear. Yep.
Bach was not famous in his own day.
There you go.
People thought he was very traditional, very boring. He was like a local country organist and choir director who also happened to just write like a new cantata every single week. Like he was a total genius, but no one really appreciated him for quite a while after. Anyway, whatever.
Oh, thank you for the.
And now you know the
corrective-
difference between my education and RJ's.
Well, I'm probably wrong. Someone will correct me.
He also
but-
had what? How many children? Good Lord.
like 9 or something.
A lot to support.
Yeah.
Dean Kissick, 42, is a writer known in large part for his annoyance at the state of the art world. He believes we've been stuck in, quote, the long 2017, a period in which anxieties related to politics have smothered culture with moralism, navel-gazing, and conformity. Although transcendence achieved through beauty, originality, and skill should be the primary goal, art has, quote, become much more about messaging, raising awareness, or a kind of ambient healing of the world. Art should capture its era, he said, but the culture wars are not the only important thing about the 2020s. Rather, he wants art to address the internet's more ineffable consequences, rendering our thought processes glitchy, destabling our sense of self. He thinks artists should find new ways to use time-honored techniques while also being open to experimenting with emerging tools, including AI. He said, the experience of being alive this century has changed dramatically. We should engage with the times we live in, and then maybe we'd feel less hopeless about everything. What he really seems to be yearning for is a paradigm shift, some sort of formal leap forward combined with a spiritual awakening. He said, the culture we have is so obsessed with ourselves, with people's identities and personalities. Perhaps we'll be able to transcend that somehow. He paused. But I don't know how that would happen. Now, this is really interesting. I thought about both of you guys. Music is now widely made, much in the manner it is consumed, by people who are alone encased in their headphones. I share the feeling, Kornhaber writes, that the mundanity of streaming has made music feel smaller, less important than it used to. But I see plenty of signs that the art form still serves a social function. One of the biggest stories in the record industry in the 2020s has been the boom of country music, a style that's rooted in a sense of place and shared identity. New stars such as Zach Bryan and Lainey Wilson have been drawing droves, not just to stream songs, but to sell out their tour dates and tailgate in the parking lot. New honky-tonks have been popping up across the nation, even in blue states. Kornhaber then talks to a critic named Jamie Brooks. She says, there's still human culture that is being mined there, referring to country music. But Brooks sees the country renaissance as a mere side effect of the genre being late to technological adoption, which isn't the same thing as defying it. Streaming is taking longer to eat it, she said, but streaming will destroy it. There's an upside here at the end that I'll read, but I want to hear from you guys. Is this too
I don't
dour?
like it.
I don't buy it.
I don't like it.
It's trying way too hard.
I'm like, I don't know if we know that we suck while we're sucking.
No, I mean another
historically
perfect example.
speaking.
So the Impressionists, no one liked them in
Right.
the mid 19th century, and all the paintings that were winning the big salons. There was this guy named David who painted this awful. Everyone hates this painting called it's not the Birth of Venus. Maybe it's not the Botticelli. It's Aphrodite. Anyway, whatever. It's terrible. But no, everyone hated Manet and Monet and Courbet and now we're like, and Van Gogh, like he died penniless. Like you can never evaluate the art of your own era. I don't
Also, you
think.
know my
Not
favorite
never,
music
but-
for like 10 years of my life, and I know the entire songbook? Dave Matthews Band. Okay? Like, calm down. You know what I mean? Like, what? Like, I'm just like, oh yeah, it was great back then. Like,
What
name
I'm-
any song and I'll just start singing it. Literally, it's burned in my brain.
That's funny you mentioned Dave Matthews Band because I was watching my son play a JV lacrosse game the other day,
Uh-huh.
and the varsity team came out to support them, and they came out in halftime and they had a big song blaring that the boys had chosen. And what did they choose?
Please.
They chose a song by Sublime. Now, I thought to
Yes.
myself, yeah, but that said, that's the same song that we would have chosen 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Sublime is that old, and you
Yeah.
do think to yourself, and it's not always the case, but because there's tons of great new music being made, you do think, has there really not been a more popular song or a more central song for them to choose, or like a gazillion of them since then? And maybe that was just the outlier, but I
But
thought
what
to
did you and your
myself,
friends listen to in high school?
grunge.
Okay.
It was our
Okay,
and
all
Gen
grunge?
X.
Joya says that no one of his generation, he's a boomer, says listen to their parents' music. And basically we have I'm guilty of this because I thrust my music on my kids. But my son, I just got him a Yes album and a Black Sabbath album. And I thought to myself, this is not even my generation's music. This is generations before.
I had a lot of friends who listened to. I mean, I didn't listen to classic rock, but I had a lot of friends who did.
You
A
guys
lot
aren't-
of
I mean,
you
friends.
guys-
I listen to soul music. That's what I grew up on. So yeah, I don't know. It's also like they're great artists right now. Like Chapel Roan's incredible.
I
Like there's
agree.
like
I totally agree. Chapel Roan's the best. Yes.
Yeah, well, that's also honestly the rejoinder I wanted to give. I've never enjoyed new music more than I have this past year.
I agree.
And I've got
like,
everything I'm streaming right now has come out in 2025, and that's not. I don't think a lot of that's true for a lot of 46-year-old guys, to be honest. But
yeah.
for me, I'm like, holy smokes! The new Hamilton Lighthouser record, and the new Smoking Popes record, and the new Pulp single. These are like huge for me, and they're
Yeah.
people of my generation. But it's all new. The
It's
new
new music.
Turnpike Troubadours. I don't know what it is for folks, but there is new stuff. What he gets at, there is an upside to this. I want to give him his due here because he's skeptical of the decline narrative. That's why he wrote this piece. He says the great media of the 20th century, the art pop album, the feature-length film, the gallery show, the literary novel, may be fighting for their life. But that's because of the competition from new forms defined by a sense of immediacy. Short form video, chatty podcasts, video games, memes. Like the old media, these forms foster tons of mediocrity, but they also invite surprising excellence. The minute-long songs of Pink Pantheress, which glitter with detail and emotion. The writing of Honor Levy, which weaves lurid stories out of internet slang. It's more of an aphoristic culture than an essayist culture, writes Simon Reynolds. But you can say quite clever, profound things in just a few sentences.
Totally.
So I think, I remember we talked about it, and RJ, you just mentioned Bo Burnham's special Inside, and I remember watching that and think, this feels new to me. I felt that way about watching
The work
Inside
of genius.
Into the
Yes.
Spider-Verse, for example.
Yes. Oh my gosh. The
I watched
Spider-Verse
that and I
movies are
thought,
unbelievable.
this is
Yes.
something I
New.
hadn't seen
Yes.
before.
Yes.
It's less of a monoculture, certainly. Like there's
Yeah.
less of like everyone listening to the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my
Well, and I'll say for our sports fans out there, this is an eternal debate. Was the NBA better 20 years ago or 30 years ago with Michael Jordan and Larry Bird or Magic Johnson, or is it better now? And people always want it was better back then. But then you look and you're like, I don't think it was. There's so much more talent. It's such a global game. And for those who've been watching the NBA playoffs, this has been the best playoffs so far that I can ever remember. It's just buzzer
Wow.
beaters and crazy games. But it's this eternal, I don't know. Things were better. It's like, well, then you go back, like, were they? Or are we
Right.
just seeing things with rose-colored
TV.
glasses,
I was just watching the new season of The Rehearsal by Nathan Fielder, and let me tell you, I've never seen anything remotely like that on
I've
television.
heard it's
Oh my
so
gosh.
good.
Oh,
Good
it's-
for you.
I haven't
Yeah.
watched
I
it. I've
thank
heard
God
it's
for
so
him.
good.
No one makes me laugh harder than that guy.
Or how about Severance? Has there ever been anything like Severance before? Like, that's a crazy
Oh,
show.
that's a crazy show.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
yeah. We're not in
There's new
this.
things. All right.
Yeah,
well,
there's new stuff.
Nonetheless, Sublime. Come on, guys. There's other stuff you can play. Please don't start with the Dave Matthews. So I say that as a loyal Charlottesvillian.
Sarah's really
Dun,
outing herself.
dun, dun. Okay.
Let's get into the more vertical content. This is Deafening Silence by Sam Bush on Mockingbird. Wonderful, Sam. Sam writes, the phone goes straight to voicemail. The flashing 3 dots pop up on the text conversation, but then vanish. Gmail reminds you it's been 8 days since you sent that email. Each of these scenarios is its own little version of hell. As humans, we are made to be in relationship with one another, but whenever communication goes cold between two parties, the silence is not only deafening, it's disastrous. Silence is golden, has its place in the world. The saying is a useful reminder that it's often far better to listen than to speak. The counter argument is that when it comes to relationships, silence can be a way of withholding love.
Mm.
After all, conversation is how we relate to each other. Studies have shown that simple conversations with the elderly can vastly improve their cognitive functions and enhance their health. 9 out of 10 counselors will tell you that communication is not just important in a healthy marriage, but that it's everything. So, what happens when the conversation goes silent? Nothing all that good. Being ghosted by someone, for example, often leads to confusion, resentment, and a lack of closure. Rather than giving the other person the benefit of the doubt, the first emotions to fill the void are often fear, anger, guilt, and condemnation. Rather than assume the person is busy or that they simply forgot to put up a vacation responder, we assume that they have either changed their mind about us or have abandoned us for better, more interesting people. Hardly ever is silence accepted at face value. In a recent New York Times article, a professor of psychological sciences reported that the silent treatment in relationships activated the same pain regions in the brain as physical pain, saying, quote, "It's not just metaphorically painful, it is detected as pain by the brain." Then Sam pivots. We often overinterpret the silence of God. If people never get a response, at least a response they would expect from God, it may not take long until they assume that God is either dead or at the very least mad at us. As we wait for a reply, we imagine God doing little more than shaking his head, quietly resenting us for all those times we said his name in vain and coveted our neighbors. "I'll talk to you when you realize what you've done wrong," we expect God to say, arms crossed and pouting. So we give up. We try to move on. Searching for connection, we pick up our phones that never disappoint in having something to say. Social media might be equal to a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal, but at least it's better than the deafening silence coming from above. We hope the hum of our busy lives will drown out the terrifying stillness, but the hum will only go so far as to numb the pain, not heal it. Thankfully, we are not the only ones who have suffered from God's silence. As Jesus hung on the cross, utterly alone, he called out, "Father, Father, why have you forsaken me?" The silence that followed was deafening. His Father uttered not a mumbling word. No explanation, no consolation, nothing at all. After one last cry of anguish, Jesus fell completely silent. Even his beating heart went still. And yet, 3 days later, God broke the silence. With an earthquake, a stone rolled away, and the footsteps of a man escaping a tomb, the voice of God rang out once for all from Jerusalem to the ends of the earth and into eternity itself. After that day, the world we live in is not one of silence, but the abundant melody of life springing out of nothing. The song of resurrection plays over and over until all the world joins in that triumphant refrain to fill the noiseless expanse of the cosmos with the sound of praise and thanksgiving. This hits home to me, having just released a book and wondering if it's any good, and interpreting people's silence always as criticism. Like, it doesn't matter. I mean, maybe I'm that neurotic. However, my whatever it is in my psyche says, um, it just fills in the blank with judgment and rejection. And it's just so Sam's reminder that the silence is not necessarily a no, or the silence is not even might not even have anything to do with me. What has someone said? You can rest assured that no one is thinking about you, basically almost ever. Certainly not as much as you think they are. I don't know. This is what struck me. In relationships, I hate those Gmail nudges that say, you sent this 9 days ago. There's been no response. Do you want a nudge? I think that that's the form of maybe culture actually is in decline for that reason. But talk to me, guys. Silence. How do you deal with it? Do you love it? Do you crave it? Do you interpret it as a no?
Well, I think I've kind of talked around this before, but I had a family member who I became, I would say, pretty close with after my parents died. We kind of rekindled a friendship from childhood, and I'd done something, or just sort of my presence has struck her in a really painful way. And I first noticed there was a problem. I guess it was last summer, at a family gathering, and we had just seen each other, and she was not speaking to me. Like, she was literally giving me the silent treatment, like at a family event, and it was really jarring. It was so weird, like a weird thing for an adult to do, and like just like weird. And we were able to have a conversation about it, and it really felt like it wasn't about me. And then she kind of upped the ante.
Hmm.
And it got a lot worse to the point that like I'm kind of like I don't really feel like I can go to those family events anymore. I mean, I've kind of said I can't go to these because clearly like there's something about me that's really pissed her off. And her reaction is not to really talk about it, but to silence. I mean, it's just silence towards me.
Are you saying it's both a defense and a weapon? Is that what, Sarah?
Yeah, well, it's actually so helpful to hear that it like causes the same place in your brain that physical pain causes because it is feels that way to me. Especially because like I'm not going to cry, but especially because like I don't have anybody left and so to have
Mm.
like this whole family that I thought like I could be a part of that like I can only be a part of sometimes. There's always like this kind of unspoken thing of like, well, Sarah can be here because she's not is like really weird post the death of my like I'm just like, what are we doing? This is so weird. Like people have died like but silence has kind of been the mechanism and it sucks. And like I think about it probably every other day. Like it'll flash through my pain. My mind is just this like real wound I'm carrying now of like what have I done? Deep rejection, loneliness and like, you know, feeling like I don't have anybody, right? So like and I wouldn't say this exactly like I know she doesn't listen to the podcast, but like I just the only like comfort I have is that I know that God is so much bigger than the things that we hold against each other and the silences that we give each other.
Hmm.
And I know that like ultimately God is not silent. And I don't mean that that can like really sound vengeful. I'm sure I have done something. Or my presence has been painful for her in a certain way. And I know that God's great and final merciful act for us is reconciliation to one another and to God. And so like I find a lot of comfort in that, but it doesn't mean that it's not very painful because it is. So yeah. This is
Yeah.
like
This is close to the bone
Sam,
for everyone.
this is mean. Why did you write this? Yeah. Yeah.
RJ, what do you think?
It makes me think of when there's someone who's like been a very faithful churchgoer, and then they just stop coming. And
Oh,
it's
gosh,
like,
yeah.
and it's like, what happened? Did I say something? Did they just decide it wasn't worth their time anymore? But then come to find out that there was something going on in their life that you just
Mhm.
didn't know about, and they come
Mhm.
back and like, I'm so sorry I've been gone, but I was going through this thing with my child, or we got pregnant and we have a baby now, and
You interpret the silence as judgment.
absolutely.
Yeah.
The absence is judgment. And I'm sensitive to that also, like with email, because so many people send me emails and it's sort of hard to keep up sometimes. But I always have this sense that, like, until I respond to this email, they're going to receive my silence as judgment. And I don't want them to feel that I'm not worth their time. I want to be as responsive as I can. And sometimes I struggle with that.
And I
And
think
then
that's true to a certain extent. Like, I don't think that's you being neurotic. I think that's very true for people in ministry. Like, you feel the weight of
yes,
like, I have all these emails.
yes,
They're waiting for a response. I have to think
yes.
through this stuff. Like, I think that's real.
That's the hard thing on ministry is like,
Yeah.
The
is
transference. Yeah.
communicating, and then also always communicating in the most helpful, gracious, punctual,
Right.
way
Right.
you possibly can. It's a joy and a privilege, but it's also exhausting. And then I think about parents whose kids never call, and they interpret that as judgment and trying to be
Yeah.
like, it's not. They're just they're busy. They have things going on, and the more you take it personally, the more you're going to drive them away. By the way,
Alas.
right? If you could just learn not to take it personally and to be
But also, like, we know parents of adult children, and the adult children don't speak to the parents. And, like, that's its own,
well,
right?
and
That
then
is
sometimes it is, and
a real thing.
how do you
Yeah.
bridge that? How do you bridge that gap? How do you begin to reach out again in a way that's not going to push someone farther away? So sometimes that's a real thing. Sometimes it's not. Um, I do, I do wonder though, because I have people in my church who have been going through something hard for a long time, and or their spouse has been going through something hard for a long time, and they've been caring for their spouse, and they've been praying, and they're just like, what do I need to do to make this stop? Why will God not answer? Uh, what is he trying to teach me that I need to learn so that this will stop? I can't do this anymore. Um, and I wonder about that because it is true. Jesus has risen from the dead and the victory is ours. And yet, for a lot of people, a lot of the time, it just doesn't feel that way at all. And all I can say is, I'm praying for you. I love you. God is with you, even though you can't feel it, I can't see it. He is doing something. I don't know what that is right now. I love you. Hang in there.
Hmm.
Like, what else? What else can you say?
I mean, sometimes the hope is just what Sarah said. It's eschatological. It's just like the
Yeah.
final word is going to be one of reconciliation, and I don't know
It is.
anything other than that.
That's
It
a hard
is,
thing to say
but
to somebody, though. Like,
it
I
is.
feel
Certainly
it's
not
like
in the
a
moment.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
almost feel like it's a thing, like pastorally,
Like,
you
I
have
need
to
God
say, like,
now. Now
this
I
isn't
need
a
him
thing
now.
and this isn't a
Yes.
thing you're gonna feel right now, and that's okay. And this
Yeah.
may not be a thought that you can even hold right now, and that's okay. But it is true.
Yeah, the other side of this, as that, I mean, although I interpret silence as judgment, I know that in my own life, silence, sometimes words have been very often been a vehicle of control. And if I can just say the right thing, do the right thing, I can fix
Yeah.
something. And silence has been a way of giving it to God. And just saying, the classic hands off pays off, or just like, everything I say seems to make this worse. So I'm going to go silent and see if God can fill the space.
Yes.
I'm thinking of one person in particular who was texting me, just increasingly vicious.
Oh God, was it me, Dave?
No, increasingly just baiting
It
me
was me.
into something political, and I just I engaged a couple times, and I thought, oh my gosh, there's no engaging. This is
Yeah.
a switch has been flipped. I can only go silent and pray because I still care about the person. And so it was an act of faith. It wasn't an act of judgment. And I am struck by what RJ said, because over the years, you're at a church for 14 years, like I've been, and there are lots of people, or you go to a Mockingbird conference, and you remember the people that sometimes they used to come. Wow, their seats are empty now, or something like that. And that's why I don't look at the registration list beforehand, because I will interpret people's absence as judgment. And the truth is, it's almost 98% of the time, it has nothing to do with you or with the church. And we've discovered this over time, especially as we've been nothing. We haven't been totally silent with churchgoers. I mean, I watched, the most touching moment I had at the conference was a guy who I hadn't heard from in 8 years, Carl Lamanon, who wrote for us at one point, and I don't know what had happened. I didn't really give it that much thought, but he had come back, and he said, I really needed this, and thank you so much for all that you've done. I had no idea,
Right.
Another person, a deep friend who I was in his wedding, who had moved across the country, and sort of things have gone silent. And I really care about this guy. RJ's friends with him too, but we just hadn't been in touch for a long time. And I thought to myself, I don't think there was any judgment around this. It was simply just a matter of life. And then he was back. Mark, and I love you, Mark. Mark Joy.
Yeah, Mark Joy.
One of the best people, one of God's most sanctified individuals.
Oh, such a good guy.
In both cases, the silence, I don't want to interpret their silence, but I can say that it doesn't feel like there was an end to the silence, and feeling God sort of was somehow there. I don't know how to put it that way, because I know that I can wield it as a weapon. In my marriage, I can wield it as a weapon.
Sure. In your parenting.
But it can also be it can also be an instrument of faith. And that's why this is so difficult.
Well, and what you said, Dave, I just want to make something really explicit. I think, what you said about just needing to go silent and pray about it and give it to God is usually the advice I give to parents about their kids. They never call. I've done something. I've tried. I just feel like I'm pushing them away. They're so mad at me, or I'm worried about them. I need to rescue them. I need to save them. And I'm just like, you know what? Probably all you can do at this point is just pray that God intervenes or sends someone into their life that can break whatever's going on there. Because it's not going to be you. It's probably it can't be you.
Yeah. And when the silence breaks, it just breaks. And all of a sudden you You don't even remember it almost.
Swinger.
Right.
When shall we? When will she call? She'll only call when you stop caring if she calls. Swingers.
Oh,
The
gosh.
opening.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
opening
yeah.
Ain't that the
scene.
truth?
Yeah.
Well, let's
yeah.
close with the one most incredible interview I've read in a little while, probably since the Zadie Smith one. This was sent to me by Stephanie Phillips, wonderful Stephanie Phillips over there in Australia. Hey, Stephanie.
Hey, Stephanie.
And then once she sent it to me, then like 4 other people sent it. I was like, okay, I'll read it. This is an interview in the New York Times. David Marchese interviewed Ocean Vuong. Ocean Vuong is a Vietnamese poet, a Vietnamese American poet who has become quite well known. He won a MacArthur Fellowship. He's a tenured professor at NYU. He wrote a book called On Earth, We're Briefly Gorgeous, published in 2019. It became a bestseller, and he's only 36.
Wow.
Anyway, his new book, The Emperor of Gladness, which sounds fascinating, comes out May 13th. The whole interview is unbelievable. And he starts out by talking, I guess some of the characters in his new novel work at fast food places because he himself is a son of immigrants and worked at fast food places. And these were very formative experiences for him. Here we go. And he talks about working at a Boston market in East Hartford, Connecticut, which if you've ever been to East Hartford, Connecticut, and I happen to have been there quite a few times.
It ain't West Hartford.
It ain't West Hartford. No one wants to be in East Hartford, Connecticut. So Marchese asks him this. What do you understand about places like East Hartford that doesn't get communicated widely enough? Here's Vuong. As a culture, we always want this grand arc, rags to riches, gets the girl, gets the guy. I wondered if I could write a book that didn't have improvement arcs because it aligned with my observation of my communities. My brother has worked at Dick's Sporting Goods his whole life. My stepdad works at this auto parts company. For 25 years, he worked from 3 p.m. to 12 a.m. We want stories of change, yet American life is often static. You drive the same car, people live in the same apartment, but it doesn't mean that their lives are worthless. So what happens? I've been interested in this idea of kindness without hope. What I saw working in fast food growing up in Hartford County was that people are kind even when they know it won't matter. Where does that come from? I watched coworkers get together and dig each other out of blizzards. They could just dig themselves out and leave, go home sooner, hug their families, but they all stayed and they dug each other out. What is kindness exhibited knowing there is no payoff? Marchese asks him, well, where do you think it comes from? He says, I don't know. I've been trying to articulate this for so long because it's important, but I've been ashamed. People ask me, why did you become a writer? I give the answer that makes sense. I went to Pace University. I tried business school because I wanted to help my mother. I couldn't do it, and I went to Brooklyn College and to an English department, and then I became a writer. That's not untrue, although I don't know if it's honest, and your question is now bringing me to this idea of cruelty and goodness. There was this one event when I was 15 that I think altered the course of my life, although at the time it was not an epiphany moment. When I was 15, I decided to kill somebody. I was working on the tobacco farm, and I rode my bike every day. It was 5 miles out. You wake up at 6 in the morning. I rode my bike, and I went to work mostly with migrant farmers. You get paid under the table, and if you show up every day, you get a $1,000 bonus at the end of the season. It was this hot July evening. I was in my room, and I look out the window and see that someone has stolen my bike. It was someone I knew in our neighborhood. He was a drug dealer. You would put your bike outside on the stoop and when you're running in and out, and this guy was known to grab your bike, and there's nothing you could do about it. But I snapped that day. I saw him, and I was so angry because I knew I'm not going to get this back. I'm going to lose my $1,000. For context, my mom made $13,000 a year at the time. I go outside and say, give me back my bike. And essentially he said, F off. I lost it. I went across the street to my friend Big Joe's house. I knocked on his window. I remember putting both of my hands on the windowsill. I have no shirt on. I'm sweating. I'm so angry. And I said, please let me borrow your gun. At this point in the interview, Vuong starts to cry. I'm so sorry. Marchese says, can I give you a hug? And they hug. I appreciate that you're being honest, but if it's too much, we can stop, okay? Vuong continues. He says, I think what I'm trying to get at is that I didn't become an author to have a photo in the back of a book. Writing became a medium for me to try to understand what goodness is. Because when I was begging my friend, please give me your gun, he said, Ocean, I'm not going to do that. You need to go home. What was so touching to me is that I was not responsible for that. Someone else's better sense saved me. You tell yourself you're in control of your life, but moments like that happen, and you're just like, wow, I don't know that it was up to me that I got here.
Mm.
Right?
That'll
It's
preach
really
on Good
good.
Shepherd Sunday. I'm going to use them to steal that.
It's
Holy
incredible.
moly.
That's
The-
so beautiful.
He's trying to understand goodness. That's the I remember Christian Wyman saying something about that. You know, Chris Wyman, the poet, who said it wasn't suffering that brought him to God, it was joy. He couldn't account for joy.
Mm.
He couldn't account for, in this case, what he experienced, because the headline of the piece is like the moment of grace that saved Wong's life, and they don't that ocean of Wong's life, and he doesn't ever uses the word grace, but he actually refers to a Buddhist concept called satori, but that's what he experienced. Someone intervened, where God showed up in a way that's the actual answer to why he's a writer and not in prison, because he talks about having to bail out his cousins and everyone in his community. What a testimony, though. I don't know. What does it make you think of, Sarah? They start weeping during the middle of the interview.
I mean, this feels so unrelated, but I'm thinking about how I dated a guy in high school who I would have never married ever. And this is so unrelated. And how one day he was like, we're going to go have lunch with my grandparents and the whole family's going to come. And I was like, great. Okay. These are not college educated people. His parents weren't college educated. I don't think he ever actually graduated from college, but they were so kind. And his grandparents did not own, but ran a storage unit place, right, where you'd like bring your stuff, and they lived there. There was a house in front of it, and it was in a Walmart parking lot. So you would get your plate of food and you would go sit on the front porch, and you would be sitting in a Walmart parking lot.
Oh, wow.
And like, I think the value of stories of people who live in poverty is so high, and we have so few of them. So I think I'm just grateful for him. I'm grateful that God saw fit to give him a voice and give him the ability to write and tell these stories. Cause I think, I think about that a lot, and how weird that was for me, and how we don't get a lot of those stories, and that often, and we've talked about this before, often that's where God lives most profoundly, right? So I'm grateful for the story.
RJ, what do you think about Ocean and Big Joe?
Yeah, I mean, when you started reading the article, it made me think that he was, and I'm not really qualified to say this, but it made me think like he was describing like the biggest divide in our culture, right? The divide between people who are trying to get somewhere and do something, and people who are not. But maybe they're trying to get someone they love there, their children there, but for themselves, they're just showing up at work day in and day out. And that when you, and I don't want to be pejorative, but being ambitious takes up a lot of energy, and it's very self-centered.
Yeah.
It doesn't leave a whole lot of energy necessarily to like love other people or take time for other people or dig their car out of the snow or whatever it might be. Like maybe there is a tension between ambition and love, that those two things don't necessarily, mix. But then as I listened to this story, I think what I was struck by was the universality of what he's saying. That I think everyone, if they really think about it, can think of a moment when sort of there, but for the grace of God, go I. Like things could have turned out way, way, way differently if I hadn't had someone there who was a shepherd. I mean, it made me think of Samuel Jackson at the end of Pulp Fiction. I'm the tyranny of evil men. I'm the weak and I'm the strong and you're the weak, and I'm the tyranny of evil men, but I'm trying real hard to be the shepherd.
Mm.
Remember that scene at the
Yeah.
end?
Completely forgot
That's
about that
so
scene when he lets the
Yeah.
guy off, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and kind of saves him,
Yeah.
And that's the call is not for us to be the shepherd. I think the good news is the way that God uses people in our life, like was it Big Joe? Is that what it was?
Yeah, Big Joe.
Or Samuel Jackson, or whoever it was, to show up and be the shepherd when we and we forget sometimes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
He's also surfacing the sort of innate glory story that we love of the rags to riches thing, and refusing to
ambition. Yeah.
engage in that and being
Yeah.
like, because we project that theology of glory into our Christian lives, and we think you need to move along this ladder of holiness or whatever. And he says, what about those people who basically work at Dick's Sporting Goods their whole lives?
Right.
Are their lives are not worthless. In fact, they're filled with
Yes.
incredible moments
Yes.
of kindness that you kind of really can't account for outside of some goodness in the world. And
let's be honest, more kindness maybe than
that he
people
wants
who are so self-involved like me.
Well, that he wants to interrogate that they're just constantly thinking strategically. He talks about everyone's thinking strategically.
Right.
And
Next
he talks
level.
in there later, Sarah's interesting. He talks about the grief involved in kind of shifting social class, because he's now a tenured professor at NYU, and yet he goes back and he's very working class, poor upbringing. And there's grief in that, and like he couldn't even read around his mother because he knew his mother was a frustrated writer, and that she sort of took it as a judgment. There's such sensitivity to it, but I think that the miracle of these small kindnesses that subvert the dog-eat-dog nature of sort of this for that of the law, but also the theology of glory, that if to be worth anything, you need to be getting better and better and growing all the time. There's something profoundly human and deeply, deeply moving, because what he's saying is that the greatest thing that ever happened to him wasn't something he did. It was something that happened to him, that he wasn't responsible for it. And so he doesn't even sound like he feels like responsible for his success, for any of it. I love it. What does he say at the end there? Like, I don't think it was up. We have this, you tell yourself you're in control of your life, but moments like that happen and you're just like, wow, I don't know that it was up to me that I got here.
Yes.
And that can have a negative interpretation, but it can also have a positive interpretation. And his is one of wonder and gratitude almost. Sorry, Sarah.
No, it's fine. I love this. This makes me want to talk about so many different things, but I'm reading this great book. Give me just a second.
While you look it up, remember Robert Capon talking about, what if the tax collector went out and cheated people again? Would he still, if he didn't have some upward arc of redemption, would Jesus still be merciful? God still be merciful? He said, yes, that's the scandal of grace. That's
what Peter does.
Yeah.
Right. When he denies Jesus 3 times and Jesus reinstates him. And then, was Paul saying Galatians, when I saw Peter at Antioch, I confronted him to his face because he was clearly in the wrong. He'd separated himself from the Gentiles. And it's like, oh, Peter. And but Thomas Cranmer recanting his faith. And then, yeah, man, we're all a mixed bag. We're all
I'm reading this book in my book club right now called All the Beauty in the World, the Metropolitan Museum of Art and Me. It's by a guy named Patrick Bringley, who actually would be a great speaker for us. And he, after he experienced the death of his brother through, I think he died of cancer, and, he had to see it up close. And it was really painful. And Patrick was like working, I think he worked for the New Yorker. I mean, he was like trying to make connections and get the jobs and do this stuff. And it just felt so small, which was like a word I love that he used to describe it. His brother dies and he quits the whole thing and he becomes a guard at the Met. And he does that job for 10 years.
Wow.
And so the book is about his work there and just like the day-to-day pace of it, the art that he sees. I mean, it's an incredible book. I can't recommend it enough. But there's this line that I read the other night that I had to find the pencil, as soon as I saw it. And I don't even have it in front of me. I can kind of remember it because it stayed with me so much. I don't remember what he was talking about. It had something to do with fame. And he said, at some point, you have to realize that you're not the light. You just get to stand in the light for a while.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's such a
What a-
beautiful, also it's a beautiful way to talk about God, like, right, like like the relief of knowing that we're not the light, but that we get to stand in it. The relief of knowing that we're not actually in charge, right, of like seeking revenge, but that God is gently or powerfully moving us from one place to the next.
Gosh. Well, let's end there. What you are not the light, but you do get to stand in it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for sharing today. We'll have all those links in the show notes, and we'll get together in a couple weeks to record one more before the summer break. I'm gonna miss you. All right, you two. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening. Remember, you can find us on the web at www.mbird.com. And we'd always love to hear from you at info@mbird.com. Audio production for the Mockingcast is provided by TJ Hester. And if you like what you've heard, please drop over to iTunes and leave us a rating or review. Until next time.